Roland Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Folks, I keep telling y'all, Republicans do not care about poor people. They don't care if they're not pro-life, they're not pro-family. You won't believe the programs they want to cut to avoid a government shutdown. We'll be joined by Congresswoman Jahana Hayes, who sits on the House Agriculture Committee, talking about this last-minute showdown. Also, we'll talk to a black Georgia family fighting to keep their 600 acres of land from eminent domain seizure for a railroad in the middle of their predominantly black community. A black superintendent falls prey to moms for liberty who have taken over school boards across the country. Charleston superintendent gets put on a paid administrative leave after being on the job for less than 3 months. One of the board members will be here to explain what is happening. The Fearless Fund won a massive victory in their court in a discrimination lawsuit today. The federal court in Atlanta will tell you about it. Plus, President Joe Biden becomes the first sitting president to join a picket line. And Vice President Kamala Harris was in Atlanta today for her Fight for Our Freedoms college tour. We'll show you some of what she had to say. Plus, in our Marketplace segment, the co-founders of Approved Jets, a private jet company, will be here to discuss their luxury travel offerings. It is time to bring the funk on Roland Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
All right, folks, the fight to keep black land has been a battle African Americans have faced for centuries. And in Georgia, a railroad company is threatening to use the state's eminent domain laws to take away land from black folks so they can lay down a spur track right through the predominantly black community in Sparta, Georgia. A spur track is a stub track that diverges from the main or other tracks, providing access to industrial or commercial areas. It usually dead ends within an industrial area. Janet and Mark Smith, they're leading the No Railroad in Our Community coalition. They're trying to protect the 600 acres that have been in their family since 1926. They join me now from Sparta, Georgia. Glad to have both of you here, Janet and Mark. So let's walk through this. When did y'all first hear from this railroad company that they wanted to access your land?
It started April the 4th of 2022, and we received a letter from the Sandersville Railroad Company. And the letter, just briefly, it said, "Dear Mr. Smith, the Sandersville Railroad plans to build a new railroad track from near Sparta southward to the Hanson Quarry. I'm sending you this letter because some of your property will be required as a right-of-way for this new project." And I just want to let you know, this is the first we ever heard of it. No phone call, no knock on the door. We just get the letter, and attached to it is a financial statement wanting to know if we own anything, a mortgage, any of our lenders on our property. That was the first we heard of it.
So, all right. So have you talked to elected officials in Sparta? What are they saying?
Yes, we have. We've talked to them. In the beginning, it was a little colder than it is now. Since they've seen so many people join the coalition, they saw how big the coalition is. I think now that they're coming on board now. They're not against us. As a matter of fact, they even said that they were for us. So that's where they are now.
Well, if they're for you, then how can the railroad invoke eminent domain?
You know, that's the question. One of the questions that we have for them. You know, if you're for us, you know, it seems like to me that you could stop this now. You know, you could do something with this, and it doesn't have to continue on going through this process. So that's what we're dealing with them now.
But the law requires that he prove eminent domain. The president of Sandersville Railroad, Benjamin Tarbutton, he came in with like he had eminent domain. The letters, he's written us numerous letters, and we've written him back, and we're saying no. We don't want this in our community. So it wasn't just us. We soon realized that. And by the way, those 600 acres belong to three other family members.
My cousin.
Three other family members.
Cousin, nephew, and a brother.
Right. And as we canvassed out into the neighborhood, our neighbor came over and he said, "Hey, did you get a letter?" And we're like, "Yeah, we got a letter." Then we called our family members. We found out they had a letter. And then we soon found out that right now there's 18 property owners being represented by the Institute for Justice. But what our commissioner said was they don't get involved in eminent domain. He has eminent if the state of Georgia says he has eminent domain, he does. And that's how he came in that way, like he had eminent domain.
Okay, so
we've been fighting him.
So the eminent domain. So eminent domain is granted by the state, not the county or the city?
Right.
By the state, but I think it has to be approved by the county, though.
Yes.
It has to be approved.
But the process starts at the state level, which is where we are right now with the Georgia Public Service Commission.
Our hearing is in November.
So I guess what's jumping at me here, again, and like I get your point when you say how he's responding, how he's operating, because they probably have done this before, and his position is, look, we always get our way.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
When you talk about this coalition, how many people are now part of the coalition?
We have about 60, all of our community, there are about 60 people in the coalition, 18 of actually are property owners. What happened is when we went out into the community, we found out that our neighbors, and when I say neighbors, country neighbors now, they're about 3-4 miles down the road. But we found out that the people who were located closest to the rock quarry, which is another issue, rock quarry asphalt plant, they received no letter. Mm-hmm. They never got a letter. And the reason they didn't get a letter is because they don't own the property in their backyard.
But the train will be very close to their homes, though.
Yeah, but he didn't need to get eminent domain for their property. Mm-hmm. He didn't need permission from their property.
But he has to get ours to get there, to get to it.
Right. 18 property owners. So there's 18 property owners who are actually the Institute for Justice, Southern Poverty Law Center, and Ogeechee River Keepers, who are our non-for-profits. They jumped in. We reached out. We reached out to the non-for-profits. We said, hey, look, we need help. We cannot afford legal fees. So he, just for like a year, just kept sending us letters. He finally made a monetary offer. His last move was to make a monetary offer. He never offered money up front. So when he made that monetary offer, we all said together, we formed a coalition. We all said we knew what he was doing. He was sending us all the same letters. And so we said, no, there's no amount of money that you can pay us to lay track through our properties, especially since 600 acres, been in a family for almost 100 years. And then your name is going to be on a deed, and the decrease in the property value, that you can't pay us enough to give you permission to do that. And that's when he took us to the Public Service Commission.
And that's one of the big issues about this property is my grandfather bought this property during Jim Crow, and it was during the Depression and Jim Crow. And they have worked and preserved this property for all of these years. They have been good stewards of it. They farmed it. We've used this. My grandfather used this land to educate his children. My father used it to educate us, and now we have used it for our children. And now he comes along after 100 years, or actually 98 years, and he wants to take that generational wealth away from us. Okay? So that's part of the problem there. You know, we've always worked to keep this property. We love this property. It's a beautiful place. And they're treating it like it's just a piece of land. It doesn't mean anything.
The train track was actually going to go behind that pond that you just saw there. It was going to go behind the pond. We were going to be able to see it from our backyard. We're a little farther away than our neighbors, but we live in a senior citizen community. Most of right in the back of that, there was going to be a train back there. And we because we have the amount of property that we do, and because the land is limited to African Americans, especially in our county, it's a hunting area here. It's a hunting refuge here. A lot of people come here to hunt. So we, on our place, we allow people, any color, doesn't matter who you are, but especially African Americans, they can come, they can go fishing, they can hunt, they can relax here. Put a train, that's done. That's done. That's not going to happen.
Have y'all been in contact with Senators Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff?
We have been in contact with Senator Warnock. Yes, we have. And his aide.
His aide actually came and spent the day with us.
Yes, yes.
How about the other Senator Ossoff?
No, we have not been in contact with him.
Have y'all reached out, or they have responded?
No, we reached out, and there's been no response other than Senator Warnock's aide.
When did y'all reach out to Senator Ossoff?
No, we did not reach out to him. No.
And
no.
I'm saying, but are you, I mean, look, you got two United States senators. Y'all should be reaching out to both of them. So you should be reaching out to Ossoff too.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting us know that. That's what we'll do. We will make sure we do that. Like I said, the hearing is in November.
What about the state senator and the state rep from your area?
Yes, we have. Yes, we did. We reached out. We did.
No response.
We reached out to our representative, our state representative.
And you got no
Mac
response?
Jackson. His name is Mac Jackson. No response.
As a matter of fact, when we had a meeting, it was a forum with Tar Button, his whole group, and with our coalition. He was there. Mac Jackson was there, but he was not there in support of us.
So you reached out to Representative Mac Jackson, no response. Who is this? He's state rep or state senator?
He's a state representative.
Who's the state senator?
Warnock.
No. Warnock is the United States senator. Who's the state senator?
Oh, yes, right. We got it. Yes, we have not reached out to him. I know who you're talking about. We have not reached out to him yet.
Yeah, so you should reach out to your state senator. You should reach out to U.S. Senator John Ossoff. And then how many times have you reached out to Representative Matt? Is it Matt Jackson?
Yes.
Yes, we've reached out to him several times.
Mm-hmm.
Several times.
Okay.
Yes. He happens to be in the same town as Benjamin Tar Button.
He lives in the same town.
He lives in the same town. The night we had the town hall meeting, he walked right past me. I said, "Oh, you're here for us. Good." He walked right past me.
He was there for Tar Button.
He was there for Benjamin Tar Button. They live in the same town together. That's his hometown. Sandersville, Georgia.
So hold on just one second. I just want to make sure for our audience, and y'all should be able to see this. This right here, hold up. Oh, we should pull up in a second. Give me 1 second. This is Matt Jackson right here.
Mm-hmm. That's him. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, we certainly going to reach out to him and find out why, what's his position on this and why he has not responded to y'all. Okay.
All right. Now, I personally talked to him on the phone. I've seen him 2 or 3 times.
And what did he say?
He said he don't know anything about it.
And we know he does.
He said I'll investigate, and I haven't heard anything from him. And we've been going on since April the 4th. This has been going on. I write a monthly column, and Benjamin Tar Button, the president of Sandersville Railroad, Mac Jackson, they both get it. They see it. We have prayer rallies once a month in front of our courthouse. They know we've been protested, but we haven't heard anything from Mac Jackson.
Okay. Well, we'll find out as well. Well, we appreciate that. Keep us abreast what happens with this story, okay?
All right, thank you.
All right, Mark and Janet Smith, we appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. We'll be back on Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shutdown.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance.
We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie. Staying balanced is tough enough with the normal day-to-day stuff going on. But what happens when we get the unexpected? It may come crashing down through a bad diagnosis for either you or a loved one.
My son, he actually was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it came out of a very challenging time in my life. I had a lot going on with starting a new business.
How to cope and even stay balanced when even the walls are crashing in. That's on the next A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
Farquhar, executive producer of Proud Family. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, going to bring in our panel right now. Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the EPA out of D.C. Dr. Larry J. Walker, assistant professor, University of Central Florida, out of Florida. Dr. Nyambe Carter, associate professor, University of Maryland School of Public Policy, out of Washington, D.C. You know what? We see these things, Mustafa, all the time where folks use the power of eminent domain. Politicians, they align with business interests all the time. But we're seeing more and more of these stories of black folks, again, being targeted for their land.
Yeah, we know that historically, you can go back to the Federal Highway Act of 1956 and how it was used to break up black communities, to actually bring pollution into certain communities and dump off wealth in other communities. So we're seeing, you know, some of these old things from the past coming back again. We got 160,000 miles of railroad in our country. So to think that we need to build 1 mile additional makes no sense, because we saw what happened, you know, there in Ohio not long ago, and we know that we have 1,000 train derailments every year. So there's so many different dynamics to this story of reasons why they should not be doing it. And of course, taking away black folks' opportunity to build wealth through their land is one of the main reasons that they should not be moving forward.
And that right there is really what jumps out, Nyambe. You're stealing black wealth. And for this guy, and go back to my iPad, I really want to know what the state representative, Mac Jackson, has to say. I mean, you've heard them say they reached out, they tried to talk to him, and nothing. He owes those people an answer. And you know what? If you don't stand with them and support them, that's fine. Say it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think this is the point that Mustafa was making. Our communities are always seen as expendable, that there's always some price if we get paid at all, that our communities just don't matter as much to us, that we don't care about these things, that we don't have sentiment attached to these spaces. And I think, whether we're looking at Durham or Detroit or any other major cities, Miami, right, Black communities are decimated all the time. And here you have this family that is talking about there is no price. And yet you still have this person pushing to build the technology that, quite frankly, isn't very useful for some of the reasons that Mustafa talked about, and the fact that we've disinvested from the infrastructure that we already have. So to do this, I think is just going to be a catastrophe and a real injustice to this family. And I agree with you that this representative owes these people at least an acknowledgement of their complaint, or why he thinks this is a good idea to build this train track on their land. And as they say, devalue their land and provide or cause a environmental breakdown to that community.
Larry?
Yeah, this is a really interesting and sad story, Roland, but it's consistent we've seen throughout U.S. history. First of all, the couple highlighted that in terms of, land ownership, there are not that many Black folks that own that amount of land, acres of land anywhere in the United States. It's also important to note that, like he said, it was purchased during Reconstruction. And in addition to that, we can think about all the Black folks that had purchased land, had hundreds of acres of land years ago. And we've seen what's happening with this corporation. Essentially, that money, that land was taken away from either by the federal or state government or other private entities like we see. I think one of the other troubling things about, this case is that based on the law, that it's not the state, the state can come in terms of eminent domain, but also that somehow corporations can kind of, come in and initially take steps to, take away their land. That Georgia law needs to be changed, because I don't know if any other state has that particular law. But once again, we need to hear from this state representative who is a Black man who is sitting idly by while these Black folks try to hold on to the land that they have had for almost 100 years. It's not acceptable. And it's important why they're on the show. And Roland, I hope we continue to support them and find out what's going on as this story unfolds.
We've seen similar stories, Mustafa, other parts of the country, a sister in Tennessee, again, Georgia. I mean, I get emails all the time. And so I don't think people understand the literal assault that Black folks are under. And remember, we were run off of millions of acres of land because of Jim Crow and racism, the Klan.
This is a part of the extraction paradigm that the United States has always operated in. It was extraction of indigenous land, extraction of Black folks from Africa, and then bringing us here and enslaving us. And then through Jim Crow, like you said, there was the continual extraction with laws that were put in place. But we also have some power in this situation. There's a Public Service Commission. We talked about it on a previous show, but let me just bring that into this conversation, because that is a set of individuals who are actually elected. And there was actually a brother who was running for the Public Service Commission there in Georgia. And we were continually trying to get people to understand the power that existed inside that position and why folks should be voting. So we've got to make sure that we're utilizing all these various tools so that we can stop the extraction of wealth, the extraction of our health. Because if you run a train through that community, and I've worked on these issues before, you're going to increase the air pollution. You're going to have the dump off that happens often into the water bodies. Many of the folks there probably utilize wells or springs to get their water. So once again, it's our wealth and our health that continues to be impacted.
That point right there, Niambi, I think it really is a crucial one when we talk about that public commission. We were there in Georgia, and that brother was in a runoff. Ossoff and Warnock won. He didn't. And at all of those rallies we were covering, he was speaking at those rallies. He was there. And so this is one of those things where I'm trying to get people to understand you got to pay attention to all of these races. And so if you're in Georgia right now, you're like, man, this is a damn shame what's happened to this family, but you didn't vote for that public commission, but you voted for Warnock and Ossoff. This is what happens.
Mm-hmm. And the reality of it is, Roland, he probably won with a few hundred votes. I mean, many times these kinds of offices, which are not sexy, which most people don't see how they're important, they don't matter to their lives in any real way until they do. And then people say, oh, wow, I could have voted down ballot for some of these local and state races that proved to be really important, especially when we're talking about our environmental lives, because we know our communities often have worse air quality, worse water. My mom is from a small town in North Carolina called Warrenton, and that place had forever chemicals just dumped in their community. And no one was ever really brought to justice for that. It was Black people who laid down in the street to prevent those trucks from coming through, because the very people that were supposed to protect them left them out to dry, right? Because they were undereducated, they were a poor community. And I think we're going to see this again and again. If not here, it's going to be somewhere else the next time, because these kinds of down ballot races, again, for things that people don't think of as important, we don't talk to people about who their dog catchers are, who their neighborhood advisory commissioners are. We don't say enough about that. We focus a lot on the federal level, but these people have a lot of power. And in this moment, where we see that a Black family's land hangs in the balance, these people are extremely vital to our lives.
Well, in fact, go to my iPad. This is the result of the 2020 elections. John Ossoff got 2,269,000 votes. He won with 50.6% of the vote. David Perdue won with 49.4% of the vote. If you go to the race with Senator Raphael Warnock, he won 2,288,000 votes, 923 votes, 51 to 49%. If you go to that Public Service Commission, that's what we're talking about right here, the incumbent Republican got 50.4% of the vote, 49.6% of the vote for the brother Blackman. In fact, let me pull up the vote totals here, because that's also, I think, important for me. And it was, give me 1 second, and it was Bubba McDonald versus Daniel Blackman. That's what happened there. Give me a second. Okay, if I can find the results, because it was absolutely, Blackman lost by 33,000 votes. That was 0.74%, which was outside the margin. Okay, 33,000 votes. I'm still trying to find the actual vote total, because what I want to be able to show, and this is a thing that it happens a lot in these races, Larry, that when you look at the numbers, we always talk about down ballot races. So even though this was a runoff, these were the top three, this was down ballot, the other ones were in the top two, and it always happens. And so, yeah, after the fact, folks complain about something and they say, oh man, it's a doggone shame. I wish we had won that. But this is what we always talk about: judicial races, DA races, state Supreme Court races, all the races that don't get lots of attention, but they also matter.
So there's a saying, Roland, all politics are local, is local. And this is a prime example. And for most Americans, in terms of, obviously you're impacted by, you talk about those larger state and certainly federal elections, but individuals in your local jurisdiction, those matter even more, because those people are making decisions on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that are impacting you. And not only that, when you interviewed the couple, they talked about generational wealth. People make decisions at the local level, not only impact you, but impact your children and your grandchildren. And so those elections are critically important. And once again, when folks don't go out to vote and they just focus on the bigger, political issues, then we find ourselves in these situations, particularly considering how vulnerable Black folks are when it comes to wealth and land ownership. As Mustafa said, U.S. has a long history of taking land from indigenous and Black folks, and this is just another attempt.
So here's the deal. Daniel Blackman lost that race by about 33,000 votes. He got 2.2 million votes. Go back to my iPad. Ossoff got 2.269 million. Had 69,000 of the people who voted for John Ossoff voted for Daniel Blackman, he wins that race. Had 88,000 of the people who voted for Raphael Warnock voted for Daniel Blackman. He wins that race. And in fact, if I look at Ossoff's numbers, and I look at the guy Bubba McDonald, he got 2,234,000 votes. So he got less than Warnock and Ossoff did. But again, had folks voted in that race at the same clip, so let's say, take Warnock out. If the same number of people who voted for Ossoff had voted for Blackman, he wins. And you actually would have at least a Democrat on that commission. Folks, every single race matters, and it doesn't matter until you need it to matter. And that's the thing that we gotta be talking about. All right, gotta go to a break. We'll be back on Roland Martin Unfiltered, the Black Star Network. Don't forget to support us in what we do. First of all, if you're on YouTube, hit the like button right now, folks. Hit the like button because it impacts our algorithm. Also, support us with our Bring the Funk fan club. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. To support us, send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered, PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo is RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be sure to download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV, and be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available at bookstores nationwide. Download the audio version on Audible. We'll be right back.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. Democracy in the United States is under siege. On this list of bad actors, it's easy to point out the Donald Trumps, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, or even the United States Supreme Court as the primary villains. But as David Pepper, author, scholar, and former politician himself says, there's another factor that trumps them all and resides much closer to many of our homes. His book is Laboratories of Autocracy, a wake-up call from behind the lines.
So these state houses get hijacked by the far right, then they gerrymander, they suppress the opposition, and that allows them to legislate in a way that doesn't reflect the people of that state.
David Pepper joins us on the next Black Table, here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Me, Sherry Shepard, and you know what you're watching, Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Again, you heard me say over and over and over again, every election matters. 2020, 2022. I told you that these crazy nutcase people like Moms for Liberty were going to be coming after school board races. That's exactly what happened. A lot of us didn't turn out. A lot of us didn't vote. And all across the South, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, and other places, these Moms for Liberty candidates have been taking over school district boards, and one of the first things they've been doing is firing black superintendents. Well, guess what? It's come to Charleston, South Carolina. Again, here in Charleston, South Carolina, a black superintendent who's been only on the job since July is now on administrative leave. Why? Because there was a 5-4 vote by the board during Monday night's meeting of the Charleston County School Board of Trustees, where Dr. Eric Gallion was placed on leave. One of the board members who voted against placing Gallion on leave joins us from Charleston, Courtney Waters. Courtney, glad to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered. He was supposed to present a report of what he's been doing, plan of action, since taking over. Never got a chance to do that, correct?
He eventually did that after he had been placed on administrative leave. He actually suffered the indignity of having to continue that meeting.
So you're on the board. Any reason given why he's on administrative leave?
Yes. Essentially, there was a claim made by an employee, and he was put on paid administrative leave as that claim is being investigated.
There's a claim. Is it workplace harassment? Is it he was mean to them?
It is hostile work environment.
Okay, so one employee makes a claim of a so-called hostile work environment, and the action of the board is to immediately go to administrative leave? Is that what normally happens?
No, never. So typically there are numerous processes that are followed prior to taking any action against the superintendent, but this was done under the guise of protecting him so that he could be away from her as this investigation continued. But it's very important to name that just 2 weeks ago at a meeting, there was an executive session called at the last minute to discuss his contract. And during that time, we discussed several different items, reasons why he might be terminated. And so this has been a calculated effort.
Okay, did he just get the job in July?
He just got the job in July.
So all of a sudden, we got massive problems?
Sure. And we're not really told. We don't. So, of course, I'm on the other side. So I'm not sure exactly why. I can't say factually why the tide has turned. But essentially, this man came into office early July, and by July 17th, the four of us who voted against him being put on paid administrative leave found ourselves in a position of trying to convince the board to overturn a decision not to allow the superintendent to hire or make organizational changes. Now, to be clear, that action that was taken on May 18th preceded his arrival and had to do with the interim superintendent not making any changes until a new superintendent arrived. However, about a week after he arrived, the board was like, no, he can't make any changes. He just got here. We're not handing him the keys to the kingdom. And so what is assumed in the community is that there was some conversation had or maybe some information shared about, him that made the Moms for Liberty faction of the board believe that he would be a radical, and they started to oppose every change that he's tried to make in this district.
I'm confused because normally when somebody is named superintendent, you actually hire them to run the district. You hire them to make changes. You hire them so they can hire people and hire staff. You don't hire somebody to be superintendent and then have the board of trustees basically run the school district.
Not only that, but our policies actually say that we are supposed to operate at a policy level, and we are not supposed to deal in the strategic choices or the administration of the district. And so, of course, his contract says that he's allowed to manage the district in all the ways that are required. He's allowed to choose staff. He's allowed to fire staff. But this board has put an action in place that actually contradicts our policies and his contract.
Okay. Wait a minute. So you sign somebody to a contract to do the things that you're supposed to do to lead the contract, and then when he signs the contract, then they go, nah, forget what the contract says. We ain't let you do any of that.
Essentially, that's exactly what happened. And it's been shown, demonstrated through several actions. It wasn't just, he tried to bring a chief of schools to the district, because this is a man, by the way, who's probably the only CEO or commander-in-chief in America who has not been able to choose his own staff. He is working with the staff that existed in the district prior to him arriving, many of whom actually applied for the role. But these Moms for Liberty folks have cozied up to certain folks in the district. And so there's this sort of organized strategy to stop him in his tracks at any cost.
This is so. When did this 5 majority come into play?
So they came into play last November. I'm the only board member who had already served on the board previously. And so the entire board is new. This faction came out of nowhere and they all won by very slim margins. Every one of them ended up, all but one of them, all but 2 of them, ended up in a race where there were multiple candidates who were much more moderate or left-leaning, and they split all of the votes, and these folks edged in at very slim margins.
Wow. Wow. Questions from our panel. Nyambe, you first.
Hi, Courtney. Thank you for joining us. So what is the plan with Dr. Gallion? I mean, at this point, he's only been allowed, to do nothing and is now on administrative leave. So is this tantamount to firing, or is the hope that he will get tired and resign? Like, what is the plan here?
So the plan is that the community, so the beautiful thing in our community right now is that folks are responding. If I could name any silver lining here, is that our community is mobilized. You wouldn't believe the number of calls, texts, emails. We've been on the phone all day long with people saying, what can we do? The principals are like, let's organize a walkout. There are folks in the community asking. And so we're convening people to decide how we're going to strategically hold them to the fire. I immediately sent a note last night as soon as I got home and said, I expect that this investigation moves swiftly and that it's not some smokescreen just to keep him out of work. And so we were told by the chair that counsel had reached out to his counsel. We made sure that his counsel gets to be involved in the selection of the investigation firm, because at this point, the integrity of it all is compromised.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Larry.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for, coming on the show. I guess my question is, it sounds like legally, and look, I'm not a lawyer, but it sounds like you talked about his contract. It sounds like the board could be in breach of contract and find itself in a serious situation when it comes to liability. What are your thoughts about that?
So my thoughts are, these are taxpayers' dollars, and most of the taxpayers agree that it was a huge waste of resources to go through a search and then hire a man at a very significant salary and then decide it doesn't matter. However, what people need to understand about these Moms for Liberty folks is that they've got a very clear agenda and assignment, and none of that matters to them. How much money they spend on this doesn't matter nearly as much as when they scrutinize academic programs that they then reject or narrowly pass through, because their assignment is, we are going to control who is working on behalf of children, what information is presented to them, and they are doing this systematically through committee work, through policies, et cetera. So it doesn't matter that we are going to be on the losing end of a lawsuit, because the objective is clear. It's not education related, but it is a very clear objective.
Mm-hmm.
Mustafa.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for that last comment also, because folks really need to pay attention to these power dynamics that are playing out both in your city and across the country. Just for folks who are watching, has there ever been anyone else in this position that has had to face a similar set of actions?
The only time before that I know of is the one time we had a Black woman superintendent, Dr. Maria Goodloe Johnson, and she was run out of town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that, because I knew the history there. I wanted everybody else to know it as well.
Mm-hmm. And Courtney, the reality is, all across South Carolina, where Moms for Liberty took over school boards, they've done this exact same thing. They've run out Black superintendents.
Yes. And what's interesting is that they tend to replace them with Black superintendents. And so it neutralizes the claim of discrimination. But if you look beneath the surface, it is there. But of course, in terms of legal standing, then no one can identify a pattern. So what they're essentially doing is finding someone that they're okay with, right? And this is no condemnation on those individuals, because I don't know them personally. I know what's going on in my district. But they tend to find neutral individuals who will either not stand in the way of their bidding or will support their bidding, and they go with that candidate versus who is sitting in the seat, who has expressed that there are issues. And I would also name that the big issue in our district, because last night, not only did they place the superintendent on administrative leave, they also denied the hiring of a chief academic officer permanently. We had a born and raised graduate of Burke High School who has served as a teacher, a principal, an associate superintendent of elementary schools, and as interim chief academic officer during a moment when I'm sorry, I have a 4-year-old.
We got you. Don't worry about it. Go ahead.
Who served also as interim chief. You got to be quiet if you're going to stand right here. Okay. Who served also as chief academic officer during record progress for our students. So for the first time in our school's history, our district's history, we have all subgroups improving in reading. That's never happened in Charleston County. Okay. And they denied the confirmation of this woman who had been interviewed by an external panel. Never has that happened before. So this is far more than just one individual they're targeting.
Again, this is what happens, and I keep saying to our people, when we do not maximize our vote, these folks are able to squeak in, take over, and then they control power. When is the next school board election?
So November 2024. However, 3 of our 4 seats are open, and only 1 of the Moms for Liberty candidate seats is open.
So their seats are 4-year seats?
Yeah, so the reason that, so I've had 2 2-year terms. Our delegation set in place a new law a few years ago, and taking us from at-large elections to single-member districts.
Right.
That it was decided that all of the even-numbered districts would start with 2-year terms and the odd-numbered districts would have 4. And so they knew that. They had laid this plan long ago, and they made sure that they got their candidates in those longer-term seats, while our community really wasn't paying attention to that level of strategy.
So those seats are not up till 2026?
Correct. But if we can change just one of them, we would have the 5 and they would have the 4. So there is still hope, and I hold on to that all the time.
When you say if we change one of the 5, so one of those 5 seats is up in 2024?
Yes.
Gotcha. All right. Well, certainly keep us abreast of that particular seat because, and like I keep saying, there has to be, again, long-term thinking when it comes to these races. Courtney, we certainly appreciate it. Good luck. Keep us abreast of what happens to this brother.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. All right, folks, going to go to the break. We'll be right back. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. We're going to talk about Republicans. I told y'all these people ain't pro-life. They ain't pro-family. They ain't pro-America. They ain't patriotic. Wait until I explain to you what they want to cut in order to get a debt ceiling deal. It ain't got nothing to do with the Defense Department. They're attacking poor people, children, and women. That's next on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All change is not growth. Right. But thoughtful change is real good fertilizer. And that's what has been so beneficial to us.
But you also were not afraid of the pivot.
Well, and I'm a black woman in business. Come on, I don't care how I dress up. I don't care who I'm speaking with. I don't care what part of the world I am in. I still am a black woman in business. Being afraid of the pivot, being fearful of change is not what got me here. Respectful of change, respectful of pivot, yeah. Fearful, no, no.
Next on The Frequency with me, Dee Barnes, the amazing Drew Dixon.
She gives us the details behind the HBO documentary that shed light on the alleged sexual assaults by Russell Simmons.
And we're talking about the Netflix documentary, Ladies First, right here on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, less than 5% of the top executive positions in corporate America are held by women of color. We know it's not because of talent. A recent study says that it's microaggressions, unconscious bias, and limited opportunities being offered to women of color. On our next show, we're going to get incredible advice from Francine Parham, who's recently written a book sharing exactly what you need to do to make it up into the management ranks and get the earnings that you deserve.
I made a point to sit down and I made a point to talk to people. And I made a point to be very purposeful and thought-provoking when I spoke to them.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
This is Essence Atkins.
Mr. Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon.
It's me, Sherry Shepard, and you know what you watch.
You're watching Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
So you heard what Courtney there said, long-term thinking. That's what Moms for Liberty, they've been doing. Steve Bannon said after the 2020 election, they were going to be going after these school board races. There is a clear and defined plan of attack by these right-wing folks, well-funded, to go after these institutions. This is what I keep telling us. And I keep hearing people sit here give me all these excuses about who's not doing what. And so what now happens? When they take over school boards, they control the superintendent. They control the contracts. They control the hiring. They control the curriculum. They control the hiring of teachers. They control all of these things. So all this, when you see these banning of books and things along those lines, school boards. This is the education of our children. You look at a lot of these places in South Carolina, these are majority black areas. And you've got white folks now controlling these boards. At some point, Larry, our folks are going to have to understand that we're in the exact same battle as we were during Jim Crow, during the early 70s. And too many folks, frankly, are sitting on their asses, not organizing, not mobilizing, and not creating plans to counter the attacks of the right wing.
You're absolutely right, Roland. And the thing about it is, you know, we talk about, you know, these, particularly obviously now these local elections. The United States is in steep decline. And I don't think people really understand. We're talking about Moms for Liberty. This is, before we talked about the issues relating to Tea Party, you know, when it comes to Obama, during the Obama administration, this is consistent in terms of when you see when countries have, Democratic and then find a decline, whether it's the local, state, or federal elections. And so, but we need Black folks to come out and vote, because the next year, it's going to be critical. Whether we consider we're still, considered a democracy or a totalitarian nation that's ruled by individuals who don't care about Black, who don't care about Latinx folks, members of the LGBTQ plus community, anyone who is different. They will other you, and then all your rights will be stripped from you. And it essentially will have is minority rule. That is not a democracy. And if folks don't consistently come out to vote, not just next year, but every election cycle, 2 to 4 years, then we will find ourselves in a situation. We're essentially fighting. It's like we're fighting against the tide. And it's critically important that we're engaged, that we fund the candidates that will definitely address the issues that concern the members of the Black community, and that we consistently vote, not just next year, but every election cycle after.
You know what? There's this great scene, Niambi, from Scandal, where the Joe Morton character is talking to Kerry Washington, where he says, you're running around in a field of bombs that are going off, and you act like it's a field of daisies. Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of people are doing. And the reason, and I know there's somebody watching, and I see y'all comments on the boards. They keep saying, well, Roland, it's not just Black people. But I keep saying, if you look at these areas where you have a lot of black folks, our numbers are piss poor. In fact, perfect example. Tammy Sawyer dropped this. Let me just show you this here. This is an example of what I'm talking about. There's a mayoral race happening right now in Memphis. Right now in Memphis. We saw what Republicans did there in Nashville, where they split Nashville into 4 congressional areas, trying to strip authority. Memphis is a black city. Listen to the voting totals thus far during early voting. Go to my iPad.
That's the number of people in Memphis who have gotten out and voted.
Slow with it. Come on.
6%. That's the number of people in Memphis who have gotten out and voted in early voting thus far. You've got 5 days, Tuesday through Saturday this week, to get out and vote yourself. Memphis, whoever is the next mayor, will impact our city for the next decade. We're talking economic reform. We're talking criminal justice reform. We're talking about impacting our schools and, most important, our youth. If you're worried about crime and potholes, take 5 minutes and make a decision. 6%. Let's get that number up, y'all. It takes 5 minutes, and you can take somebody with you. Every day this week, I'll be posting another clip from one of the 5 interviews that I was able to do with candidates for Tammy Sawyer Talks: Van Turner, J.W. Gibson, Michelle McKissick, Paul Young, and Reggie Hall, so that you can make an informed decision. Tammy Sawyer Talks has been really excited to be a part of this process. I have been excited to be a part of this process and sit down with candidates. We'll be continuing to do coverage throughout the week, including covering the impact of the indictment of 9 officers for the murder of Gershon Freeman at 201 Poplar. So continue to stay tuned, but also get out and choose somebody. I'm not going to tell you who to choose. I'm going to tell you to be informed. I'm going to tell you to get out and vote. 6%. Let's put a 1 in front of that. Let's get to 16% by the end of early voting, okay? And then next week, let's get to 96%. I believe in you, Memphis. Let's do this. Get out and vote.
Right there. I'm sorry. There are no excuses. And I guarantee you, it's a lot more than 6% complaining.
Well, it's always easy to complain than to do something. But I think, Larry's point is one that bears repeating, not just in Memphis, but all over, because I think we always assume there will be another election, another opportunity to make it right. But what folks like Moms for Liberty and others are trying to do is play these long games. We saw it with Project Red Map in the early 2000s, where Republicans realized, we need to look at these down ballot races. We can win state houses. We can win gubernatorial races. So we don't actually need to win the presidency, because if we can win the states, we can actually extend our lives, because Republicans are quite unpopular as a group when we look at the United States nationally, but we don't vote as a nation. We vote in these districts, we vote in these communities, and they knew that, and they had great success with that in winning state houses, winning gubernatorial elections. And now in a place like Memphis, where you talk about mayoral elections and everything that mayors have to do in terms of police and hiring police chiefs, when we think about city managers and all of these really vital services that people claim they care about, mayors get to make a lot of those decisions. And the fact that Memphis is almost 65% black, and we don't even have 40,000 black folks in Memphis who've shown up, that would be about 10% of the population of Memphis, I think is an abomination. But it is unfortunately all too common. But I think the larger point is we can't assume there's going to be another election, because if these people have their way, you won't be able to vote anymore. We see what they're doing in Tennessee. We see what they're doing in Alabama, what they're doing all over the South, but in other places as well. And just because the lights come on and you collect a paycheck doesn't mean that you will always be able to do those things, because the way these people are looking at the world, they don't really see a place for people that look like us.
And again, Mustafa, when we're talking about how we must be exercising our power and using our power, we sat here and got some good news finally from this Supreme Court. Yesterday was the deadline for the special master to redraw those congressional districts. Well, Republicans, what they did was they wanted to stop this at the Supreme Court. Well, finally, a Supreme Court got some guts and said, you're not going to defy a federal order. Go to my iPad. Supreme Court declined to revisit Alabama's voting map dispute. That means now and that a special master is going to redraw lines, and there's going to be a second black district in Alabama. There's going to be a third opportunity district in Alabama. So now all black voters are not going to be pressed into one particular map. This is actually a huge, huge win. Now, they thought, Mustafa, they thought because Brett Kavanaugh sort of signaled in his previous ruling, in the previous opinion, regarding the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, in terms of how long it should be able to go forward. So they thought, boom, you know what? Here's our way. But what happened here was the court was like, yeah, no. Y'all ain't just going to diss the federal courts and try to say goodbye to the apple. But here's the thing again. All right, if we get this second district in Alabama, use the power and vote. There's a case in Louisiana, the creation of a second district. Louisiana's black numbers are horrible. There's an ongoing court case in Georgia right now that could create another district. The court in Florida has determined Ron DeSantis was wrong in splitting up 2 black districts there as well. We may have 5 or 6 new black members of Congress from these areas. But again, we're not going to exercise power if voters are not exercising their power.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, on the Supreme Court, they played themselves, right, by thinking that they could punk the Supreme Court, and it didn't work out for them. So, but out of that also comes this opportunity that you talked about. I used to teach this class on power dynamics, and we know that a lot of folks, especially who come from our communities, often don't believe that they deserve power or that power is going to play out for them in a positive way. So we've got education that we have to do to help people to understand and to better be able to utilize their power. When you talk about, you know, these new sets of opportunities that are going to present themselves, what are we going to do with that? Right? Are we going to make sure that we're placing the best candidates into those positions? That means that we have to do our homework also. We have to push those candidates. And when there are these opportunity districts that pop up, you know, then we've got to make sure that we're also mobilizing folks to take advantage of that so that we can really maximize not only this opportunity, but moving forward, maximizing the resources that will also be tied to these positions and actually building a stronger foundation underneath of our communities. But that goes back to, do we really believe that we actually deserve power and that we're going to use that power?
Again, I need folk to understand what's going on here. And I think a lot of people are sleepwalking. This Supreme Court decision is huge. Very good news for the folks in Alabama. But, and I keep telling y'all, and folks, do me a favor, please stop listening to these yahoos running around with their alphabet groups talking about black power this and black power that and how we need reparations. But now they're talking about, oh, yeah, Trump, he's growing on me. I'm like, you know how stupid you are? You know how stupid you sound? Moms for Liberty, those are MAGA people. Those are MAGA people. You put Trump back in, you're empowering him. And I don't want to hear nothing. I had some fool go, well, that's right. Well, yeah, you're not going to shame me to who I voted for. Well, guess what? You're stupid. Because I love these so-called reparations advocates who are also anti-immigrant folk, and they madly support deportation and all of that. Was cracking me up. The folk who y'all talk about voting for, none of them want to give your ass reparations. Not nail one. You can't show me a Republican in Congress that wants to do that. But y'all want to sit here and flirt with Trump. Okay, be stupid and then see what happens. But I'm telling to the rest of the folks, understand what is going on at play. The white right wing, I didn't say the right wing, the white right wing. Their strategy is to go after anything and everything in this country that's black and minority. Take your pick. That's what they want to do. Here's what they know. And all y'all people who, if you think I'm playing, go ahead and F around and find out. Their plan right now is to absolutely target the federal workers. They're targeting state workers. They're targeting county workers. They're targeting city workers. They're targeting school board workers. African Americans disproportionately have high five-figure and six-figure jobs in government because we've been frozen out of corporate America. So when you hear these yahoos come here with their smaller government, that means getting rid of your black ass and your mama and your daddy and your aunts and your uncles and your cousins. That's their game plan. Right now, Trump and his nutcase Republicans, they are literally drawing up plans. Axios has reported this. Politico has reported this. The New York Times has reported this. Right now, in D.C., not far from our studio, they have a complete operations center where they are drawing up plans to completely dismantle the federal government. They are on record as saying, we want to fire anybody who does not align with MAGA principles. So, Mustafa, these folks can play games if they want to, but they need to understand this is a federal level, a federal strategy, a state strategy, a county strategy, a city strategy, and these billionaire Republicans, they are using their money to drive this. And so it's the courts, it's legislative, it's every facet, and we still got some people sitting here going, well, you know, I think Trump is the lesser of two evils. Biden has put more black women on the appellate bench than all other presidents combined. And these fools actually say there's no difference between Trump and whoever his VP is and Biden and Harris. They're nuts.
Yeah, they're just, they're spouting the same talking points that, that the Heritage and the rest of that crew, Ace and the rest of them continue to just push out. The reality of the situation is that we should be doing what's best for our communities. We should always take a look at candidates and say, who is it who's actually lived up to the words that they've done? And I never push any administration, but this current administration has put billions of dollars back into our communities. That's a fact. That's not opinion. It's not theory. And folks need to stop dealing with just opinion and theory and get down to the real facts of what's going on in our communities. So if you say that you love black people, then act like it and make sure that you're actually doing your research about who has actually helped to make change. Now, that doesn't mean that we should not push the Biden administration to continue to do better, or any administration. But we also got to realize the fact also that the MAGA Republicans are being very clear. They used to do stuff in the shadows, right? Now they're right there in your face saying, what you going to do about it? We done told you everything that we are going to eliminate. So if you're having problems with housing right now, they're going to make sure that the things that have been going on over at HUD that benefited our communities is minimized or is gone. The things that happen over transportation, making sure we have transportation policy that's no longer disproportionately impacting our communities, they're going to get rid of that. When you look at the Environmental Protection Agency and all the black and brown folks are walking around with all these diseases because you've been breathing in toxic air and drinking toxic water, they tried when Trump was in to actually eliminate environmental justice. And then enough of us got together and pushed back and stopped them. But they're going to get rid of it this time if you give them a second bite at the apple, because they're much more strategic now. They know how the government works. They know where the levers are, and they know how to eliminate your ability to have anything positive happen inside of our communities. So if you want to play around, you go ahead. But you also look your children in the eyes, and you look your grandmother in the eyes when those benefits that they needed are no longer there because you wanted to take and, play around in these types of situations. This is not a game. I talk to all kinds of people on Capitol Hill in these strategy sessions, but I'm also out there in the streets working with over 1,000 communities in my career. So I wouldn't come on TV and tell you something that wasn't true. But there's a whole bunch of other people. I don't know where they're getting their funding from. I don't know what their agenda is, but they're sharing with you things that is not beneficial for our community and will end up killing Black people, will end up making Black people sick, and will continue to extract wealth from our communities if we don't check individuals who are saying things and doing things that is not going to help us to move forward in this decade.
And for people to understand Niambi, to like literally understand how deranged these people are, keep in mind the number of Black people in Alabama. This literally is the statement from the Republican Alabama Attorney General, seething at the Supreme Court ruling. But I want people to see the first line of his statement. Go to my iPad. My fellow Alabamians, no. What it should say is my fellow white, right-wing, conservative, Republican Alabamians. Because clear, the white attorney general, the white Republican attorney general of Alabama don't give a damn about Black people, because this is what he literally says. The state will now be encumbered with a racially, go to my iPad. The state will now be encumbered with a racially gerrymandered, court-drawn map for the 2024 election cycle. I'm sorry. Y'all asses got busted because you dissed Black people. You ignored Black people. You packed Black people. And the courts busted your racist maps. So I love it how the racist map makers now want to call it racist that they got busted. Back to my iPad. This fool writes, and it should say again, the white right-wing Alabama legislature, because it was Republicans, it wasn't the Democrats, passed a, quote, fair and reasonable map in 2021 that mirrored what multiple federal courts had blessed in years past. When the U.S. Supreme Court held that the map likely had discriminatory effects, the legislature went back to the drawing board and settled on a map that took out the purported discrimination and applied neutral principles fully and fairly. That's a lie. Y'all, it's a straight up lie. It is now clear that none of the maps proposed by Republican supermajorities had any chance of success because y'all are racist, because y'all were dissing the Black people. I love this. Treating voters as individuals would not do. Actually, Supreme Court was saying one man, one vote. So they actually were saying individuals. Back to my iPad. They then go, instead, our elected representatives and our voters must apparently be reduced to skin color alone. Yes, y'all said white was right. You. Go back. No Alabamian, Black, white, Republican, Democrat can look at the court-drawn maps that will soon be imposed on us and see anything other than the prioritization of race above all else. No, nice try. These, Niambi, if you read further this letter is literally a Jim Crow era letter. There should be nothing more offensive, go back, to the people of our great state than to be sidelined in 2023 by a view of Alabama that is stuck in 1963. This racial agenda is pressed by left-wing activists, not just in Alabama, but in any Republican state where it might advantage Democrats. If this brazen and divisive commandeering is permitted without even a whisper of concern from other quarters, America's congressional elections, as we know them, will never be the same. Niambi, I swear George Wallace could have written this in 1963. Right now, in 2023, this is the language of that the white Dixiecrats used against black people, and they're doing the exact same thing.
Well, absolutely, because trying to get something that looks like equality is oppressive in their perspective, right? Because they want it all. Because when you look at that map, I think it's really rich that they say that Alabamans are reduced to skin color when they so obviously pack as many black voters as they could into that singular district. I mean, the fact that they're even squabbling over one more black representative potentially out of the other representatives from that state, I think even tells us something, because even one additional black representative is one too many for these people, because what they want to do is squelch black Alabamans. And because they've been caught on the mat, because they've said they've tried to seek relief from, again, an additional district. It's not as if they said there could be, you got to draw all the districts in a way that blacks are the majority of the whole state representatives, right? But the way that they're talking about it, you would think that's actually what we're talking about. So I think when you're the oppressor and somebody says, hey, you can't keep doing this to people, and you have to slightly behave, everything looks like oppression to you. But I think this is, to Mustafa's earlier point about people who like to be contrarian just to sort of be a free thinker, independent thinker. There's nothing that we can sort of both sides about this. What is happening to black folks in Alabama and many other states, as you mentioned, Louisiana, Mississippi, and so many others, that is not by happenstance. That's not about free thinking. That's not having a different worldview. In many cases, these people do not see a world where black people should have any place at the table, where black people should wield any kind of power. And if we are not careful, some of us will both sides ourselves into the grave, because these people are not happy for us to sit at the table, but they are happy to use our votes. They are happy to use our shields. They're happy to use our faces, our likenesses, our art, or any other thing to sell this vision that just does not exist, right? This vision of color blindness, which, lo and behold, always leaves us with the short end of the stick, always with less than, always, in some cases, with nothing. And so I find it really interesting that Alabamans, white Alabamans, and this state attorney general and even state legislators are complaining about the fact that they cannot continue to discriminate against black folks while claiming they're being discriminated against because somebody told them to cut it out.
It's utterly hilarious. All right, I go to a break real quick. We come back. Folks, Republicans, I told y'all the people ain't pro-family, they ain't pro-life. Wait until you hear what they want to cut to keep the government open. You're gonna be shocked and stunned. Plus, we'll talk to two brothers who own a private jet company. That's right, black folks fly private. We'll talk about that next. Roland Martin, Unfiltered, the Black Star Network.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a back last
This
year.
is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Next on The Frequency with me, Dee Barnes, the amazing Drew Dixon.
She gives us the details behind the HBO documentary that shed light on the alleged sexual assaults by Russell Simmons.
And we're talking about the Netflix documentary, Ladies First, right here on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show. You're watching Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
Republicans want to shut the government down because they're like, yeah, we didn't accept anything when it comes to these spending cuts. Well, guess what? They want to cut a whole bunch of stuff. But, you know, they always seem to be targeting women and children and poor people. Yeah. Oh, they're not targeting other stuff. They're not targeting, this is a live look of the debate right now on the House floor. They're not saying, you know what? We've got billions being wasted in the Department of Defense, so let's not give them another 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 billion dollars. No, let's just keep screwing over the poor people. Yeah, that's what they're saying now. So their latest proposal is unbelievable in terms of what they want to cut. They literally want to cut, listen to me, money for home assistance, money to heat homes, low-income women and children, nutrition programs. Yep, that's what they want to cut. Joining us now is Congresswoman Jahana Hayes of Connecticut. She sits on the House Agriculture Committee. Glad to have you on the show. Congresswoman, this is why I just keep saying that Democrats should never let them play this game when they go, we're pro-family, we're pro-life. You can't be cutting food for children and low-income people and call yourself pro-life when 30,000 Americans die annually from hunger.
Well, thank you, Roland, for having me, and you are absolutely right. And I warned against this. When we negotiated the debt ceiling, the Republicans gave us a hardline number and cut SNAP benefits at that time. And I warned my colleagues, they're not done yet. I don't know what their obsession is with feeding the poorest people in this country, the safety net programs that keep children fed. This budget that they want to put on the floor will cut WIC by $800 million. A family will go from $47, what they were getting for fresh fruits and vegetables, to about $13 a month. 300,000 families who receive rental assistance will be in jeopardy, heating assistance. But they don't stop there. It's not just food. Their cuts to Title I would remove 225,000 public school educators from Title I schools. This is just dangerous legislation. It's the worst ag bill that we've seen in 20 years, and it specifically targets women and children. Nothing about the highest income earners, nothing about rolling back some of the Trump tax cuts. Every cut in this budget is to women and children and the most marginalized, poorest families in this country.
Oh, let's talk about Pell Grants. They want to cut, same thing. So all of you college students vote Republican, guess what? They're coming after you.
Yes, absolutely. All the safety net programs that are meant to help stabilize families and get people on their feet so that they can earn a living, all those programs are being cut. And it's targeted with just forensic precision, the way that this bill is drafted, because to your point in your opening, the defense bill is increased. The defense budget is actually even more than the president asked for. So when you look at the top lines for the budget, people may say, oh, well, it's not that big of a cut. It's because defense went up and all of our safety net domestic spending went down. And I don't understand how. I mean, I am someone who supported funding for Ukraine, and I still do. I think that that is critical. But how do we not take care of American families right here in this country? How do we not feed American children right here in this country? This bill also cuts about 70% of global food aid. That is part of our global security. I've really studied this issue as the chair of the Nutrition Subcommittee and now the ranking member. This has been my #1 issue, and these provisions are so incredibly dangerous. It's about more than just putting a meal on someone's table. This is, I mean, the intersection between all of these problems, between all of these communities when we're not feeding people is just so critical. And I can't believe that this is the bill that they're putting on the floor and selling it to the American people as this is fiscal responsibility. They are not pro-life. They are not pro-children. They want to starve them and feed them once they're here after they force women to have babies.
You mentioned Ukraine, and I got a bunch of tweets on this, and it's hard for people to understand this. A lot of people, I see them complaining about the amount of money. A lot of black people hit me all the time complaining about the amount of money that we're sending to Ukraine. And I got to keep reminding people, if Putin takes Ukraine, he's going to target NATO countries next. Based upon the NATO agreement, if any NATO country is attacked, we have to defend them. So the reality is, we're going to spend money now or later. So supporting Ukraine is to keep him from getting Ukraine and trying to reassemble the old Soviet Union, which cost us way more money than what we're spending right now.
You're absolutely right, Roland, but it's a really hard sell when you're talking to American people who are struggling. When I go back home and the people in my community who are struggling to feed their children, and I'm trying to explain to them exactly what you just said, and it's hard to make the case or to make a compelling argument or bring them to a place of understanding when time after time, programs like all of the ones I just said, rental assistance, food assistance, heating assistance are being cut. Those people feel like the American government is not on their side. And it's really hard. How do you blame them? And I go home all the time and try to make this argument to people because you're absolutely right. Our democracy is on the line. We're at a point where if we lose elections, you don't just lose the election. We could risk losing our democracy. We could risk never getting these programs back. We can risk our global security. So we have to do both of these things at the same time. Fund things like our aid to Ukraine, but also fund programs that support the American people. It should not be one or the other, and that is the choice that my Republican colleagues are putting on the floor right now.
Congresswoman Jahana Hayes, I certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much for joining us. Keep up the fight.
Thank you so much. Well, it's going to be a long week.
All right, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. All right, folks, some good news out of Atlanta today. The Fearless Fund went to court. You know, Ed Bloom, that white nationalist, he's been targeting anything dealing with affirmative action, dealing with race. Well, they went to court today. Well, a federal judge did not grant him what he wanted, and so he's already appealing to the Court of Appeals. Why by Saturday? Because that's the deadline for folks to apply. Folks, we're talking about $20,000 grants to black women-owned businesses. And so he's saying, how dare they help black women entrepreneurs? When it comes to venture capital, black people are getting less than 2% total dollars. Black women, less than 0.5%. Oh, but they think, oh, we're just making off like a fat rat. So, again, he's appealing that decision. It's not over, but a great win by the Fearless Fund. And so keep up that fight as well. And so, and we must be opposing Ed Bloom at every chance we can get. Today, President Joe Biden joined United Auto Workers members on the picket lines. He is the first sitting president to join an active strike. He marched with Michigan workers demanding several benefits, including a 4% raise over 4 years, more safeguards for part-time workers, and a 32-hour work week, all of which Biden says they deserve.
You heard me say it many times. Wall Street didn't build the country. The middle class built the country. Unions built the middle class. That's a fact. So let's keep going. You deserve what you've earned, and you've earned a hell of a lot more than you're getting paid now. Thank you very much.
While the president was in Michigan, Vice President Kamala Harris was in Atlanta continuing her tour for the Fight for Our Freedoms tour. This time she was on Morehouse campus. This is the fifth stop. She was at Atlanta United University Center, of course, again, Morehouse Spelman and Clark Atlanta Morris Brown. She was taking questions from the audience on this time. And so she was, of course, Gia Pepper, Cedric Richmond. They were the moderators of this conversation. Here's some of what she had to say.
So, Madam Vice President, in light of recent legal challenges to reproductive rights, what strategies do you believe are essential for the protections provided by Roe v. Wade? And how can we promote a more inclusive and comprehensive approach to reproductive justice?
Thank you. And I just want to point out an obvious point. That question was raised at Morehouse College. So, as I said earlier, for your generation, in your lifetime, you have witnessed the highest court in our land, the Court of Thurgood, take a constitutional right that had been recognized from the people of America, from the women of America. You all are going to know less constitutional rights than your mother or your grandmother. And after that decision, the Dobbs decision came down, it's been just a little over a year now, in our country, in states across our country, they started proposing and passing laws to criminalize healthcare providers, to punish women, to make no exception even for rape or incest. And now everyone has grown here, so I'm gonna talk about that a little bit, because understand on this issue, this is not just about some intellectual academic debate. Since that decision came down, there are people in our country every day who are silently suffering. Now, many of you know, Makai mentioned that I started as a prosecutor. One of the reasons that I decided to become a prosecutor is because when I was in high school, my best friend, I learned, was being molested by her stepfather. And I said to her, you have to come live with us. I called my mother. My mother said, yes, she has to come live with us, and she did. And I specialized then in cases of violence against women and children. So the idea that these so-called leaders who are extremists would pass laws with even no exception for rape or incest, what that means is they are saying to a survivor of a crime of violence, a violation to their body, that they don't have the right to decide what happens to their body next. That's immoral. That's immoral. And here's the thing on this subject. One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government should not be telling her what to do with her body. The government is not in a better position than she is to know what is in her own best interest. If she chooses, she will consult her priest, her pastor, her rabbi. But how dare these people in state capitals decide they're in a better position than she is to decide what's in her own best interest? And so on this subject, again, elections matter. Because here's the thing, if we have members of the United States Congress who agree to that point, which is that the government should not be telling somebody, that's up to them and their God and their choice. If we have enough people in the United States Congress who agree, Joe Biden has said he will sign into law putting back in the protections of Roe v. Wade. And here's the other thing, because we are in Atlanta, that I want to mention on this subject. Do you know, and I want to also congratulate the Morehouse Medical School of Medicine for what you've been doing on maternal mortality. on black maternal mortality. We've been working together on this because here's the thing. So do you know that, first of all, when we're looking at an issue like black maternal mortality, which is that black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in connection with childbirth than other women. And it has nothing to do with her socioeconomic status or her educational status. It literally has to do with the fact that when she walks into that clinic or that hospital or that emergency room, she is not taken as seriously, okay? Black maternal mortality. The top 10 states with maternal mortality, almost every one of them also has an abortion ban. So the hypocrisy again abounds because these people who are pushing these bans dare to tell us, well, this is for the sake of women and their children. Well, then why have you been silent on maternal mortality? Right? So it's important to see the connection between all of these issues, but again, elections matter, and every day in our country is having an impact on real people. And especially here in the South, where, you know, a working person, usually most people who seek abortion care have children. The majority do. So that means she's got to figure out if she's got sick leave that's paid, if she's got affordable child care, which she probably doesn't, if she's got extra money for bus, plane fare, how to go to a state where she can actually do what she feels is in her best interest. How's she gonna be able to do that? Why are we making people suffer like that? And so this is yet another example of what's happening. And you know, so one of the things that you all have learned, and I just love, I'm gonna just confess that I'm a geek on some things. I love Venn diagrams. I do.
It was real excited. They was like, same. Someone is drawing one right now.
I do. You know those 3 circles? Sometimes you can do more. I think Venn diagrams are so helpful when you're trying to discern what's going on, especially when there's conflict. So I asked my team, I said, let's drop a Venn diagram. From which states are we seeing attacks on reproductive health care, attacks on voting rights, and attacks on LGBTQ rights? You would not be surprised to see an incredible overlap. See what's happening. See what's happening. But this is also then back to my point about the opportunity for coalition building. Let's bring everybody together to fight for our freedoms, to fight for fundamental freedoms to be.
Larry, Biden in Michigan, Harris in Atlanta. He's there with workers, she's there with students. For all people who say they're not out there talking to the people, what are they talking about?
Yeah, they're just making up the same nonsense as they usually do. And look, let's give the VP credit. I mean, she was in North Carolina last week. She is on the road. She has been on the road. Obviously, she traveled internationally. But this tour over the last couple of weeks, and obviously she's going to continue, is critically important, as we know that, you know, the Biden-Harris ticket did very well with young voters. And those votes are going to be critical in states like North Carolina and Georgia and other states throughout the country. So let's give, like I said, give VP Harris a lot of credit, her team a lot of credit, and realizing she needs to get out because she can speak to a lot of these issues. Also, President Biden, in terms of being in Michigan today, look, I come from a union home, and it's critically important, as he highlighted it. The unions help build the middle class. I'm from Pennsylvania. My dad was a union member. So it is critically important that these auto manufacturers who were bailed out by the country during the beginning of the Obama administration and reap the rewards. CEOs are making millions of dollars. We need to make sure that those automakers can take care of their families, pay their mortgages, send their kids off to college. They earn the raise, and it's time for the auto manufacturers to pay up.
Mustafa.
Reproductive justice, economic justice, workers' rights. That's the things that we're fighting for. And, you know, when we talk about reproductive justice, our community, out of all communities, should be supportive of that because we know what it feels like for someone to have the ability to tell you what you can and cannot do with your body. Let that sink in for a second, because that is a part of our history in America. People telling us where we could go, what we could eat, who we could pray, or when we could pray, or if we could pray. Everything was controlled by somebody else. And then to overlay that now with women telling them what they can and cannot do with their body, we should all be standing up and pushing back against those types of things. We also know on the economic justice side of the equation how critically important it is for us to be able to not just move into the middle class, but for us to be able to have a sustainable set of resources that allow us to pass from generation to generation to generation from the fruits of our labor. So if we are not supporting unions, then we're not supporting one of the vehicles that has helped Black folks to be able to navigate this country and to be able to pass something down to folks, especially their children. So in this moment, we have to stand in solidarity. We have to stand in solidarity with those union workers. We got to hold unions accountable also for those who haven't always been as allied as we would like. And luckily, some of that has most definitely changed. But that is one of the ways that we can actually help to strengthen our communities. But it all comes back to justice. If you say you care about our people, then we have to operate from a paradigm of justice.
Nyambe?
Well, look, I mean, I think Biden and Harris know that this is going to be a tight race. And I think these are not, you know, small commitments that they're talking about, whether to reproductive justice, talking to Black students, especially with student loan forgiveness. That was huge for Black communities. So I think they're doing what we would expect them to do. They're in an election cycle. We know it's going to be a difficult election. It's going to be a tight election. Unfavorables for Biden have been consistently high, if you will. And so I think there's a lot of need for them to be seen. So they're going to the places they need to go to. They're talking to the constituencies they need to talk to. And I'm glad, at least at this particular moment, the team has not defaulted to the we need to just talk to white working class, because that's where the problems are. They're talking to their core base, and I think that's going to be huge. And I think, you know, going back to something that was said earlier, is that Biden and Harris need to also talk about the things that they have done in these last few years, things that have mattered to these very same communities, whether it is COVID assistance and rolling those tests out, whether it is rolling out more availability of COVID vaccines, student loan forgiveness. I mean, that's a big one for me. As a recipient of student loan forgiveness, as were other members of my family. So I think they can do that. In addition to these town halls, I think they will be in a better position than some of the polling suggests that they are now. And this is not to suggest that these are not very sincere and very real conversations that they're having. I'm just saying that this is the kind of stuff we need our politicians to be doing on a regular basis, and not just during election cycles. And while you're there, also tell us, what have you been doing? Because they've been doing a lot, and they have not taken a lot of credit for it.
Absolutely. All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. We come back. Marketplace segment. We're talking, of course, we always feature Black business owners. Did you know brothers actually own a private jet company? Yep. We'll discuss that next, right here. Roland Martin Unfiltered, the Black Star Network. YouTube, folks, hit the like button, folks. Let's get to 2,000 likes before we get into the show. Also, join our Bring the Funk fan club. Look, y'all, all the work that we do, the shows that we have, this show 2 hours a day, Project Muhammad 2 hours a day, our weekly shows. Look, we do more Black news than any other Black-owned media company in the country, more than any mainstream media company. But it ain't cheap, and also it ain't free. I told you how these advertising companies do not fully support us. Next Wednesday, I'm going to have my part 2 of laying you out what these agencies and the companies are doing. But we need your support. The goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each. That's $1 million a year. That's $4.90 a month, 13 cents a day. We right now about $325,000 short. So please support us as best as you can. Send check and money orders to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Of course, you can also Download our Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Of course, you can see us on Amazon News. Simply go to Amazon Fire and check out our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week streaming channel. Also, tell Alexa play news from the Black Star Network. You can also watch us on Plex TV as well. So simply go to News and Opinion, go to their search, and then you can find the Black Star Network there as well. And of course, don't forget to get a copy of my book, White Fear: How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available bookstores nationwide, Ben Bella Books, Target, IndieBound, Books A Million. You can also download the copy, the audio version, Audible. We'll be right back.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. Democracy in the United States is under siege. On this list of bad actors, it's easy to point out the Donald Trumps, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, or even the United States Supreme Court as the primary villains. But as David Pepper, author, scholar, and former politician himself says, there's another factor that trumps them all and resides much closer to many of our homes. His book is Laboratories of Autocracy, a wake-up call from behind the lines.
So these state houses get hijacked by the far right, then they gerrymander, they suppress the opposition, and that allows them to legislate in a way that doesn't reflect the people of that state.
David Pepper joins us on the next Black Table, here on the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, less than 5% of the top executive positions in corporate America are held by women of color. We know it's not because of talent. A recent study says that it's microaggressions, unconscious bias, and limited opportunities being offered to women of color. On our next show, we're going to get incredible advice from Francine Parham, who's recently written a book sharing exactly what you need to do to make it up into the management ranks and get the earnings that you deserve.
I made a point to sit down and I made a point to talk to people. And I made a point to be very purposeful and thought-provoking when I spoke to them.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
Next on The Frequency with me, Dee Barnes, the amazing Drew Dixon.
She gives us the details behind the HBO documentary that shed light on the alleged sexual assaults by Russell Simmons.
And we're talking about the Netflix documentary, Ladies First, right here on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shutdown.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Sherry Shepard with Sammy Roman.
I'm Dr. Robin B., pharmacist and fitness coach, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, many of us travel all around the country. Y'all know how much I do, even when these airlines keep breaking my damn golf clubs. United, Delta, you know how we do. Southwest broke one several years ago as well. And so it's the headaches, of course, when you're out there and going through the airports and delays. Well, you see a lot of people who are also flying private or charter. Well, a couple of brothers actually own a private jet company that offers customers what they call an unforgettable, luxurious experience as they travel globally. Aaron Wilson and Kelvin Amensa, co-founders of Approved Jets, provide grandeur to their customers who want to arrive in luxury cars to private jets. They join us right now. So how y'all doing?
Pretty good.
And where y'all based?
Based in Miami.
Based in Miami.
Yes.
So how'd y'all get started in this?
We got started, to be honest, it's a funny story. We got started in our former company. Me and Aaron was actually partners in a company called Vomos, a technology company. And, we just, we looked at each other one day and was like, you know what? I think we should just do this on our own. I had the clientele, of course, and I told Aaron.
Now, was that company a private jet company?
It was a technology-based company around private travel and concierge service. And, I was always in the space, basically. I've been in the space for now 10 years. And I told Aaron, I'm like, you know what? I have the clientele. Why are we working for someone else? Let's start our own business.
And your response?
I was a little bit reluctant.
Right.
I'm not gonna front.
When you look at him like, I'll show mine.
I had to ask, Kev, are you sure? He said, yeah, I'm sure. I said, all right, let's do it. Leap of faith, and we went full force.
All right, so where did you start? What did you do?
To be honest with you, it was bootstrap. You know what I mean? We came up with, of course, a business plan. I had the clientele. I told Aaron, I said, listen, we got to do it this way. We're not going to spend too much money on payroll. We're not going to spend money on marketing because I know everybody already. And I told Aaron, I said, listen, if you believe in me and you believe in this idea, let's do it. Let's go for it.
But how does it work? Do you own planes? Do you partner with others? So how does your company work?
Right. So the approach that we had taken initially was heavily predicated upon a relationship-driven model.
Got it.
So we have access to over 1,000 aircrafts worldwide that could range in size from a mid-size to a super mid to a heavy.
Now, are these people who own planes? And then they're not obviously flying all the time. And so it's sort of like when I went to Innisbrook. Sheila Brooks owns Innisbrook. And so she owns the whole property, but there are people who actually own the rooms. And so what they then do is they put those rooms, when they're not staying there, they put those rooms into their system and they rent out those hotel rooms, if you will, to folks who are traveling there, and then they get a cut of that, and then the resort gets a cut as well. Is that how y'all are operating with these privately owned planes?
So Kev, what I think would be important is to even explain like the supply chain, even right from the owner, operator, broker.
So basically, if you own a plane, right, and you want to offset some costs, and you're not flying, throughout the year, you give it to an operator, which manages the aircraft for you, which then gives it to brokers, which we are, a brokerage firm.
Got it.
And then we will now give it to our clients, and they'll rent out the planes and basically charter it out. Also, we have a program.
Private jet Airbnb.
Something like that. Something like that.
You own a house.
Yeah, something like that.
You want to rent the house out.
Yeah.
You want to make some money while you're not there.
Right.
And then, all right, you got a willing customer.
We're an additional, I guess, approach toward monetizing your asset.
Correct. Yep.
Got it.
And it's pretty interesting because once you start understanding, why these people own these planes, for the tax benefits and certain things, you understand, okay, you're basically having an aircraft, for tax purposes, and you're offsetting almost 80 to 90% of that aircraft.
Explain that when you say they're owning the plane for tax purposes.
So basically, high net worth individuals need big tax write-offs.
Right.
Correct? So they go into the luxury division, which is yachts, cars, or jets. But 2 years ago, when Trump was in office, actually, he announced that basically you get a 400% write-off when you buy an aircraft. Now, when Biden came in office, he actually jotted it down to 80%. So when you buy an aircraft, you actually could depreciate the value for 80%.
And this is how the rich take advantage of politics. And that's exactly what happened there with Trump. They were hooking up a whole bunch of folks with lots of money with those planes, yachts, and things along those lines.
Correct. I mean, it's basically they took advantage of the tax break. You know what I mean? And basically they took advantage of owning an asset and saying, you know what, I can depreciate my asset, and why not, make a little bit of money from the asset. So
you have access to 1,000, and so when you talk about your clientele, who are you trying to reach? Because obviously it ain't cheap flying private jet.
So we're targeting a small niche of people. It's the high net worth individuals, corporations, of course, a couple of athletes as well. But I think it's basically we're trying to make it, not saying too much affordable, but we're trying to make it accessible for the average person to, reach out and say, hey, I need a private jet, and how can I, put together some money and fly private. During COVID, when COVID happened, we see the influx of private jets because, the airports is closed. And, we had to really pivot and see that transition because we've seen so many first-time private jet flyers. And we was like, me and Aaron was like, wow, this is amazing because it's first-time people willing to fly private for the first time.
And one of the key things to keep in mind as well is that while it's something that's, an industry where there's a super high barrier to entry and, it might be a very capital-intensive place to be as it pertains to being a consumer, we are working on solutions that could appeal to the masses and be a lot more feasible to the masses. So, for instance, right now we have different product offerings such as fly sharing that are in the works. So,
what's that?
So fly sharing is a concept that Kelvin and I thought of and we're bringing to fruition right now, where it's more so focused on you and a group of friends or a group of individuals who you might know by way of our mobile application that's coming to the market shortly. You guys can split the cost of a private aviation charter as opposed to you taking on that financial burden yourself. A lot of people are leveraging private aviation travel for the sake of business purposes, but some people are using it more so in a recreational capacity. So fly sharing is a solution for that, right?
I mean, you got people who are flying the bachelorette parties.
Exactly.
Bachelor parties.
That's the audience for that.
Stuff along those lines. Yeah. So if somebody's out there who doesn't know, what's the cost? How much, if you're flying one-way round trip, how much are we talking?
So, Kev, I think we do Van Nuys, which is located in LA to Teterboro. And
so LA to New York. First of all, somebody at home know the hell Teterboro is.
and then we do Teterboro to Opa-locka, so New York to Miami.
Okay.
So LA to New York on a super mid-sized jet could cost you anywhere between $30,000 to $35,000.
G4.
Okay, in G4.
$35,000.
$35,000.
One ride.
One way, correct.
One way.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, if you're going from New York to Miami, which is Opa-locka, cost you anywhere between, on a mid-size jet, anywhere between $20,000 to $25,000. Now with the influx of oil prices and gas prices, things a little bit higher. But a heavy jet can cost you that same routing for a 2-hour trip, 2.5 hour trip can cost you anywhere between $30,000 to $35,000.
So Kev, what are some examples of a heavy jet? I mean, we need some additional.
How many seats?
So a heavy jet is 12 to 14 passengers.
Got it.
A mid-sized jet is anywhere between 6 to 8, and a super mid is anywhere between 8 to 10 passengers.
Got it. So again, so put it in again for somebody who's watching, they're like, "Yo, dude, seriously, $35,000." Bottom line is, if you got 14 people and you're flying from LA to New York, it's going to cost you $35,000. It's really $2,500 a ticket.
Correct.
And if you look at prices, depending upon when you buy that first class ticket may be $1,200 or $1,500 or could even be higher.
So Roland, to that point, there are some legs and some trips where it would actually behoove you to take a look at what the private aviation charter would be as opposed to buying the first class ticket, because it might end up working out a lot more cost efficient. So it's
especially when you find a big group out as well.
Exactly. Or when you're doing shorter. So something that people have to keep in mind about private aviation is that it takes a certain amount of fuel just to get in the air.
Right.
When you think about specific legs like Van Nuys to Las Vegas, so LA to Vegas,
right.
Common leg, weekend trip, Fridays, it takes a lot to get a bird in the air. So at that point, it might be a little bit too expensive or might not make sense from a big picture perspective for you to take that leg. You might want to do commercial.
Because it's a quick trip.
Exactly.
But if you're flying 3, 4, or 5 hours.
Exactly.
Correct.
And are you seeing that? Are you seeing people who are not necessarily really, really high income earners who are doing that, who are realizing? Plus, it changes, frankly, your time and your schedule as well.
Yeah, it's saving time, it's saving, going through an airport. It's more efficient. And to be honest with you, it kind of spoils you when you start flying private. So you start seeing the influx of people that don't really have the income starting to fly private in short distance. But to be honest with you, I look at it like, a gift and a curse, right? It's once you have the money and you want to spend on private aviation, the gift is the fruits of the labor. But a lot of people right now are real cost. They're looking at the cost of things. They're really, really only flying private when necessary now.
And then also it's super important to point out the intangible, right? The intangible is the operative phrase here. Private. A lot of people are flying private because they want privacy. They don't necessarily.
Well, that's what happened with Oprah. I'm going to my panel in a second, but Oprah was flying commercial. And so she told the story of she's on the plane, and this woman's like, "Oh my God, I love you, I need to hug you." And Oprah's like, and this woman just grabs her and hugs her. And when she got the plane, she's like, "Yeah, we're buying that plane," because her deal was kind of like, okay, folk are getting way too touchy-feely. And so when I saw that story, I cracked up laughing, but that's literally what happened. She was like, I'm not sure about the cost buying this plane, but then it was kind of like, oh, hell no, I'm not sitting here doing this here. And for people who are extremely busy, the time is a whole deal. Look, I know what happens when you get stuck in airports. In fact, I was just flying from, what the hell's my last trip? Oh, dang, I forgot where I was just coming from. And literally, the flight got canceled, and then it was supposed to be a 10 a.m., 9 a.m. flight, and then they got pushed to 10. Then they said, oh, we're not going to leave until 6. And then they were going to route me from wherever I was going to Chicago to D.C. Then it was kind of like, no, hell no. I called my sister, booked on this other airline. I think I took Southwest, and it left like 2 hours later. And again, so those things happen. So when you factor in the amount of time lost, especially if you're a business person, it makes sense when you look at, again, time lost, business loss, and all of those things combined. Questions from our panel. Let's see here. Larry, you're first.
Yes. First of all, gentlemen, congratulations on your success.
Look, because Larry, you got that private jet look.
Yeah, every once in a while, you know how we do.
You know how we alphas do.
You know how we do it. So, my question is, you talked about, your success during the pandemic. And then post-pandemic, some businesses, small and large alike, are struggling. Have you continued to grow, or have you saw, in terms of the number of flights, people taking decrease?
We continue to grow because we have strategies and targeting different aspects of the business. So we always continue to grow. Like Aaron said, we have a sister company that we're coming up with technology. We understand that technology is a way where to affect the masses. But we also continue to grow because I'm also targeting different regions around the world. So I'm launching in Africa. I'm launching in Dubai. We just came back from Dubai. So I am, if it's slow here in the U.S., it's picking up somewhere else.
And something else that we've been heavily focused on, again, to, just emphasize that again, we're focusing primarily on implementing technology as well. Technology is scalable, and technology is going to afford us to be able to reach the masses, whereas our growth won't be heavily predicated upon human capital and headcount and having more brokers in the seat.
Niambi.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about all the things we've been talking about this evening, and this is a really great business, it sounds like. But how do you talk about the sort of environmental concerns of more planes in the air and what this could also mean?
So, no, very happy that you asked that question because...
You know you beat Mustafa to that question. You know he was waiting to ask that question. Go ahead.
One of the primary reasons why we've incorporated the concept of fly sharing is because we know that at the end of the day, the carbon footprint and how it's impacting Mother Earth and the planet is super important. And we want to be able to preserve that for subsequent generations to come. So with that, fly sharing is going to be able to reduce the amount of birds that we're putting in the air and also the emission of some of these, just different gases and fumes, et cetera, that are going out there in the atmosphere rather than everyone who has the means to be able to fly private flying separately. So fly sharing is one thing. In addition to that, we've also been looking into other methods in terms of how these aircrafts are being powered. Now, we have faced a little bit of resistance because we did take a poll as a company with some of our clients already as it pertains to electric powered aircrafts. And there is some sort of an aversion toward that because people don't feel fully comfortable. So while it is a heavy lift, we do have to start somewhere, and we're making a concerted effort to do so right now.
Mustafa.
Yeah, well, thank you for that last point. There is some new research on alternative fuel systems for airlines. We can always talk about that offline if you're ever interested, because I work with some of the folks. But my question is... My question is around price point, right? I know that this is sort of selective and exclusive, but do you, and I heard about the flex sharing, but let's deal with the reality of lots of brothers and sisters who are working hard. Do you have on the horizon plans to be able to have a more accessible price point for, let's say, folks who are upper middle income or something like that beyond just the flex sharing?
Quite frankly, we do. However, that is something that we're we're in the works of working out right now, the intricacies of a huge partnership. We can't quite disclose. Kev, don't kill me. But it's coming soon. You'll see it very, very soon.
Sounds good.
Yeah, for sure. I think, with price points, it all factors on the influx of, the gas and things like that around private aviation. Now, we are working on something, like Aaron said. I can't speak too much on it. We have non-disclosures and things like that we signed, but it's coming real soon. It'll be, I'll say somewhat affordable for, I guess, the everyday people.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely someone who's in corporate America, et cetera. And I'd say, and we can use real figures, right? There's no point to dance around it. Someone who's earning roughly around $90,000 to upwards of there or so would be able to fit this into their budget. And then also, this would actually be affordable from a travel and expense, travel and entertainment perspective for a corporation when they're looking to expense it.
Right. And that's really what it boils down to. I mean, it comes down to expense. I mean, and businesses, those are write-offs. I remember Obama's president, and I had a speech in Louisville, Kentucky, and he decides to call a meeting of Sunday morning TV show hosts. And I was like, yo, seriously? Y'all had to pick this day? And so go to the White House, and of all days, his ass want to be late. Normally, he was punctual. Of all damn days he want to be late, it was this day. And so you go in, unlike the idiot Trump, who we walked in there with phones and iPads and everything, we'd leave all the phones outside. So we sitting there, and I was like, yo, when he get his ass in here, I got to go. Had a flight out of DCA, plane was late. Then we was a finalist check IAD, then that plane was late. So I had to end up actually at the last second booking a plane. Wow. And like we were, so I didn't land until Louisville, Kentucky. I was supposed to speak at 7. I didn't land until about 9. They met me at the airport with a police escort right there on the tarmac. Got there, gave the speech, and so I think that cost me $12,000. Okay. I was not happy having to spend $12,000 on that damn plane. I think the speech was $20. So at least I still netted money, but I was not happy at all.
The question is, Was it worth it?
Was it worth it? Yeah.
That's the question.
I still didn't want to get at 12 up. Let's be real clear. And so they were appreciative. The Speaker's Bureau was appreciative of the length and that was also part of it, full well, again, because, you miss a speech. And what was funny is I'm sitting here, and I turned to the press secretary, like, dude, I got to go. So I get up, and Obama goes, Roland, really? I'm like, yeah. He goes, must have got a speech or something. I was like, you can give me one of your Air Force One jets. I'm like, we can do that. And so I'm like, yeah, I got to go. He's like, must be a speech. I'm like, yeah, it is. I got to go. I'm like, you mess with my money. But again, that was one of those things that, like, that was the only way I could have got there, because both DC and IAD flights, they were all canceled and pushed back. Otherwise, I would have completely missed the speech. And people were like literally sitting in the room waiting for me, and they stayed. But yeah.
And don't get
a guy flew from Fredericksburg, Virginia, to IAD, gassed up, and then flew me to Louisville. Wow. Yeah.
And don't get it twisted. Private aviation does have some delays. It's just less delays because we're flying to not major airports, but smaller airports around the major.
Oh, no, I got it. I was, Reverend James Meeks was in Chicago. We were going down to Houston to see some folks and during Katrina. And there were some issues, and we were delayed. And actually, we ended up not flying that day and then flew the next day. So, yeah, it happens. But the bottom line is, when it's normal conditions, at the end of the day, if you got to get somewhere, and again, you're on a time constraint, and especially if you got to be in two or three different places in a 24-hour time frame. I mean, I've been there, a morning speech, an evening speech, then I got to be somewhere else the next morning or midday, and at the end of the day, the travel schedule simply does not work out. Right. Now you factor in terms of what that cost is. Where can people go to get more information?
You go on our website, prove-jets.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, Approve Jets. You can also check me out on Instagram, PJ Kev and Aaron.
You can check me out on Instagram, Aaron Wilson VC. That's Vegetable Carrot VC.
All right. Gentlemen, we appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thanks, Roland.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Roland.
All right, thanks a bunch. All right, folks, that's it for us. Don't forget, support us in what we do. Now, tomorrow on the show, we're going to have, of course, our number 1 hour show. And then I'm going to have another one of the pieces I did. We were in Liberia talking to a sister who owns several businesses there in Liberia. So look forward to that. Also, my girl Kerry Washington is in town tomorrow at George Washington University doing a discussion about her new book with Tony Goldwyn. Yeah, Olivia and Fitz back together again. So I'm going to drop by and see them as well. Can't wait to have Kerry on the show. And so a lot of things we got going on. We're chatting with Anthony Brown, the gospel singer, tomorrow, of course, for the work we're doing with McDonald's for their gospel concert. Next one's going to be October 6th in Philadelphia. We're going to be broadcasting from Philly that day. So we got more. There's a lot of things going on. So please support us in what we do. YouTube folks, don't forget, hit that like button before you get out of here. And y'all hear me say this all the time, and I'm telling you, it's critically important when we talk about doing this show. Of course, we celebrated 5 years this month on September 4th, 2 years of the Black Star Network on September 4th, and we're fighting out here every single day. We keep getting the runaround from a lot of these ad agencies. I'm gonna be calling several of them out next week. Yeah, by name. I'll be showing you the emails, show you the photos as well. I keep telling y'all, I'm not playing. I'm gonna call the companies out and the ad agencies. And so we're out here because they're not supporting black-owned media the way they should. So your support is critically important. You have no idea when it comes to how the impact that you actually have. And so the goal is very simple: to get 20,000 of our fans on average contributing $50 each. That raises $1 million for us to be able to do what we do. I purposely am not charging people a subscription fee. People said I should have done that, but I wanted our content to be accessible to as many people as possible. And so that's why we do what we do. And so if you want to support us in what we do, send a check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. If you have not downloaded the Black Star Network app, please do so. All of our content is on the app. That way, if anything happens with these sites, whether it's YouTube or Twitter or Instagram or Twitch, when it comes to telling us what we can or cannot show, we have complete control of our app. And y'all told y'all how I roll with transparent. Look, our OTT app is $161,700 a year. That's real money. So it's not like it's a one-time cost to be able to continue to update it and maintain that with the folks at Vimeo. And so you know what that is. And so download it on Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Of course, we also launched our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week streaming channel. You can see that on Amazon News. All you got to do is go to Amazon News, on Amazon Fire. Also, tell Alexa, play news from the Black Star Network. It'll begin to play the audio. And, of course, we launched about a month ago on Plex TV. And so get us there on Plex TV as well. And lastly, be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available at bookstores nationwide. Download the audio version on Audible. Folks, I'll see you tomorrow right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Holla! Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?